Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Allie, and on my channel we talk about books, so let's get into it. This video is going to be my February wrap-up, which I'm really excited about. I had a really good reading month. I read 19 books, which I'm very pleased with. I did read a lot of graphic novels, which amounted to a lot of the stats in this book. And I also didn't read a lot off of my physical TBR, which really was bad on me. Ow, Benji. Also, my cats are in the room with me while I'm filming, and they're on one today. So I'm sorry if you hear noises or anything like that. But let's just go ahead and get started. Let's start with the stats, and then we'll get into the books and my thoughts and my reviews and all of that. So in February, like I said, I read 19 books. 2 of them were physical, which is so sad. 8 of them were audio, 9 of them were digital or Kindle. I physically read 3,456 pages, and I only listened to 59 hours of audiobooks, which is like half of last month. And then my average rating was a 3.84. So I feel like it was a pretty good reading month. I only read 2 books off of my February TBR because I was really slacking, but I definitely mood read. And I got quite a bit read, so I'm very happy about that. So let's just get right into it. I'm gonna go in order of books I read first to books I read last, just because that's the order that I have it set up in, and that's just gonna be easiest. So we're gonna go with that. The first book that I read this month was None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, and this book was really good. I gave this book 4 stars, and it follows our main character. We have 2 main characters, Alex and I don't even know. It's been so long since I read this book that some of the details are escaping me, so bear with me. But our main character, Alex, finds her birthday twin, and her birthday twin, I can't remember what her name is, but she wants to basically do a podcast to go about like how she's gonna change her life. And in the process of this, things start to get weird things are happening, and it's very scary. It makes it scary to trust people that you don't know after reading this book, but I thought that it was really good. Like I said, I gave it a 4 stars. I really like Lisa Jewell's writing. I think that she does a great job, and I'm excited to read more of her books in the future. But yeah, I do recommend picking up None of This Is True, and I would kind of recommend going in with very little expectations. I really liked the audiobook because some of it's in like a podcast format, so you get like a cast of characters. With that, there is a couple of issues with the podcast narrator's voice being kind of quiet, so I would have to turn it up really loud, and then it would switch back and then it'd be really loud. So that was a little bit of an issue, but besides that, I thought that it was really good, and I really liked the audiobook for this one. The second book that I read was The Stone Keeper. This is part of the Amulet series, and it's the first book. It's a children's graphic novel, and it follows our main character Emily, and her dad passes away, and so her and her brother and her mom move to this like family estate basically because her mom can't keep up with paying the house payment of her current house. So they're moving to this family estate, and at this estate they find just some weird things, and one day Emily's mom goes missing, and so they follow her down this like staircase into this magical land, and it was really interesting. I wouldn't say that it's my favorite graphic novel series that I've ever read so far. I gave it a 3.5 stars, and I am excited to continue on with the series and see where it goes. I did read the second book this month as well, so we'll get to that in a little bit, but overall I thought that it was pretty good, and I'm happy that I read it. The next book that I read was Killjoy by Holly Jackson. This is the novella for the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and I thought that it was really fun. I gave it a 3 stars. It wasn't anything fantastic, but it basically follows Pip before the events of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and it's just her and her friends hosting a murder mystery party. And this was super fun for me because I do an annual murder mystery party with like my family and our like close family friends, and so it was fun to get to experience something that I've already experienced through the eyes of somebody in a book that I already know a lot about because I have read the entire trilogy of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So I just ate it up. I thought it was fantastic. I think I read it in one sitting and it was just so much fun. Like I said, I only gave it a 3 stars because it wasn't anything fantastic. It wasn't a full book, but I thought that it was a really clever addition to the series that just gave you a little glimpse into like more of the group, which I enjoyed. The next book that I finished was An Anonymous Girl by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. I gave this book a 2.5 stars. I think that this book solidified for me that I don't like the author duo of Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. I read The Wife Between Us in January and I read this one in February and I didn't really like either of them. So I'm probably gonna unhaul this because I just didn't love it. It follows our main character, Jessica, and she signs up to basically be a part of like this moral ethics quiz. It's not really a quiz, it's more of a survey, and she gets $500 from it. And then every additional survey she does, she gets more money. And then you get her perspective, but you also get the perspective of the person who's hosting this survey and like studying her. And it just really escalates and it's very weird and it's very twisty and I just didn't love it. So, I mean, you can read it if you want to. This was not for me and I'm not really going to recommend it because I didn't enjoy it. The next book that I read in February was A Thousand Splendid Suns, and I don't even know how to talk about this book. I gave it 4 stars. I think that it probably could have deserved 5 stars, but it just made me feel so sad that I had a hard time giving it the full 5 stars, if that makes sense. But it follows our 2 main characters, Miriam and Lila? I think it's Lila. And Miriam, it starts with Miriam, and she is a young girl and she is a bastard child basically. So her mom had an affair with her dad out of wedlock, and so her mom and her basically grew up in a little shack in Afghanistan. And it's really just the story of her life, getting married off at 15 and all of the hardships that come with that and living in Afghanistan. I think that she was born in the 50s, and so it was during like war and so much hardship, and this book was really raw and it was really like heartfelt and it was heartbreaking and it made me really sad and it was very hard to read. I started this book at the beginning of January and it took me until like the 2nd week of February to finish it because it was just so tough. And I read the first half of it on Kindle and then I read the second half of it on audio because I was just so, I don't even know. I like could not physically read it anymore because it was just so hard to read, but it was really good. This was the first book that I finished for my 12 books recommended by 12 friends challenge that I'm doing, and I'm really glad that I was recommended it because it's not something I ever would have thought to pick up, and I really enjoyed it. The next book that I picked up was Pilu of the Woods, and I gave this book a 4.5 stars. I really loved this. I read it in one sitting. It's a graphic novel. Graphic novels are easy to read in one sitting, but it follows our main character and she is going through a lot emotionally. It's alluded to that something happened to her mom, and so she is very emotionally raw and she's fighting with her sister and she runs away into the woods. And when she runs away into the woods, she runs into this, I would want to say like a leaf fae spirit. It's not really clarified because it is a graphic novel, but she runs into Pilu and she helps Pilu get home and really like comes to understand that the monsters in her head that are telling her all of these negative things are a part of her, and it's important to like accept your monsters but also try and rise above them. on top of finding a friend and helping her get home and then getting home herself, I thought that it was super cute and so sweet, and I loved the story, and I definitely want to read more from this author in the future. Okay, the next book that I read was The Villa by Rachel Hawkins, and I was trying to catch up on Rachel Hawkins' backlog, and so I read this one and I gave it a 3.5 stars. I liked it. It follows dual timeline of a murder house in Italy. So the first timeline follows our main character Emily and her friend Chess, and they're both authors and they're like kind of struggling, so they decide to go to Italy for the summer and stay in this murder house and write and vacation and chill and build their friendship up because they're like childhood friends that don't see each other often, and they decide to go to Italy basically. And then it also follows the timeline of Mary from the 70s, I think, and she and a bunch of her like family and friends, her boyfriend, her sister, and then some people who are already in Italy, go to this murder house, and they're like rock and roll, drugs, sex, all of that, and if something happens and somebody ends up dead, which is what causes the murder house later on. I liked Mary's perspective more than Emily's. I wasn't a big fan of Emily. She felt very whiny to me, but I really enjoyed I really enjoyed Mary's perspective, and I thought that it was fun to read from her and see like how the murder took place. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I gave it a 3.5 stars. Rachel Hawkins is somebody that I have like a love-hate relationship with. I love her work as Erin Sterling, because she does have like, she writes under 2 different names. And I really loved The Wife Upstairs. I did not like Reckless Girls at all, but I did read another book by her this month, and we'll get to that in a minute. But yes, I really enjoyed this book, and I thought that it was fun, so I do recommend it. And then the next book, I have a whole reading vlog on, so I'm not gonna delve too deep into it, but I read House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. I gave this book 5 stars. Of course I did. I am a huge Sarah J. Maas fan, and I've been waiting for this book since the last one came out, basically, and I am obsessed. I loved it. I thought that it was fantastic. Sure, it had its issues, but I really enjoyed it, and a lot of the issues that people have with this book are things that don't really bother me, so I'm very happy that I read it, and I can't wait to continue the series and continue on with more of Sarah J. Maas works in the future. And I'm not really going to go into it because if you want my thoughts, you can go and check out my reading vlog, but I loved this book. Okay, the next book that I read was another novella for a series that I'm reading, and that is Veronica Ruiz Breaks the Bank. This is the novella for the Finlay Donovan series, and because Finlay Donovan Rolls the Dice is coming out, I think it comes out today, but I got an ARC, so I've already listened to part of it. Because it was coming out, I wanted to finish and catch up on the novella. So this book follows Vero before she meets Finlay, actually kind of when she's meeting Finlay, and she gets a job at a bank and figures out that somebody's stealing money, and she figures out what happens. And it was super fast. It was like a three-hour audiobook, I think, so it was very quick. I read it in one day, obviously, and I enjoyed it. I gave it a solid 3 stars. I feel like for novellas of series, 3 stars is a pretty good rating just because there's not much to it. It's just something that you get to enjoy reading your favorite characters go on another like little adventure. So I thought that it was really fun, and I really enjoyed getting to read it, but I don't really have a lot to say about it because it was so short, and you kind of have to read the rest of the series to understand. The next book that I read was The Stonekeeper's Curse, which is the second book in the Amulet series, and I gave this book a 3 stars. I really enjoyed it. I kind of feel the same way I did about the first one. I wouldn't say it's my favorite thing ever. We are introduced to a couple more characters in this book. So we're introduced to, I think his name is Leon, and he's a fox, and he's my favorite. I really like him. And then we also get more of Misket, which I didn't talk about in the last when I talked about the first book, but there is he looks like a stuffed bunny, but he's like an automaton, and his name is Misket, and he's super cute and fun, and I really enjoy him. So we got more of that. I don't really want to tell you what happens because it is the second book in a series, but I enjoyed it and I'm excited to continue on. And then I read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, and I gave this book 4 stars, which I am shocked by. I was not planning on reading this book ever. It was so hyped, and Frida McFadden's writing is not my favorite, so I wasn't really that excited to read it, but it was recommended to me on my 12 books recommended by 12 friends thing for 2024, and so I had to read it. So I picked it up, and I was very shocked and very impressed, and I really enjoyed it. And I don't know if I'm going to continue on with the series. I know the 3rd book comes out in June, and the 2nd book's already out, so I might, but I haven't heard great things about the 2nd book, so I'm not totally sure. But this book follows our main character, Maggie? Is that what her name is? I'm gonna call her Maggie. I think her name is Maggie. She just got out of prison, and so she needs a job, and she decides to be a live-in nanny for this family. I think they're the Winchester family. And the woman is completely insane, like crazy, weird, like totally insane. And the husband is like so sweet and charming and fantastic, and she falls in love with him and like thinks he's great, and things escalate from there. And that's really all I can tell you about a mystery book, but it was not what I expected at all, but I really enjoyed it. The next book that I read was The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins, and I gave this book 4 stars. I was very impressed. So this book follows our main character, Jules and Cal, and they are married, and they've been married for about 10 years, but Cal comes from a lot of money, and he owns a house and has like $100 million, but he refuses to touch it, and he refuses to live in this house because his family lives there and he hates his family basically. And in his grandpa's will for this house, this estate, it's stated that he's not allowed to kick these people out of this house basically. So he just doesn't live there, and they live in a different state. Him and his wife live in a different state. But when somebody passes away from his family, he's requested to come back to the estate to kind of settle affairs and figure out the money and stuff like that. And a lot happens at the house, which also I don't want to give you anything more than that because it's a mystery, so I don't want to spoil it. But his mom had 5 husbands, and so we also get a second perspective of his mom writing letters to somebody about all of her husbands and what happened to them. And it was interesting. I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was so much fun, and it was really cool to get to see, I don't know, this perspective that I wasn't expecting. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. I thought that Rachel Hawkins did a great job, and I thought that the cover, first of all, is beautiful, and I'm a fan, so I definitely recommend picking this one up if you have a chance to. Okay, the next book that I picked up was Heartstopper Volume 1, and I read this book for the first time in like 2020-ish, I think, and I gave it 4 stars the first time I read it. It wasn't my favorite. I got rid of the book. I never continued on with the series, but with the 5th one coming out and everybody talking about it, I really wanted to pick it up. So I got it from the library and I read it, and I gave it 4.5 stars, and I loved it, and I'm continuing on with the series, and that's kind of all I can say. It follows Nick and Charlie, which I'm sure you all already know about because I'm late to the train, and they are having like a budding romance in this first book, and it's really sweet, and they're just really good friends that are like becoming more than friends, and it's so cute, and I just like it. It's just sweet. So I do recommend Heartstopper if you haven't picked it up. And then the next book that I read was The Fury by Alex Michaelides. This is the author of The Silent Patient, which everybody loved and I didn't. And then he also wrote The Maidens, which I also didn't really love. But this one I liked a lot. I gave it a 4.5 stars, which is pretty high for this month. I think that this is the 2nd highest rated book on my list from February, I'm pretty sure. But this book was wild, and I don't even know how to talk about it because it's wild. It follows a bunch of actors, and they decide to go on vacation to Greece. And that's really all I can say, other than somebody ends up dead. and it was weird, and it was good, and it was twisty, and it was fantastic, and I definitely recommend you pick it up. I went into this with such low expectations because I don't typically like Alex Michaelides' work, but I was blown away. So I definitely recommend picking this one up as well. And then I read Saga Volume 1, and I gave it a 3 stars. I think that this series has a lot of potential, and I'm excited to continue on with it. The first book was kind of a lot of info dumpy in a graphic novel sense, which I wasn't totally sure how to feel about, but I'm excited to see where it's gonna go because the ending of the book was pretty exciting, and I think that things are gonna get very, like, I don't know, I don't even really know my thoughts on it. I just really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to continue on with the series. I don't even really know how to talk about that book because it's just, I don't feel like I have enough information even though I got a lot of info dump. I guess the best I can do at describing is that it follows Marco and Alana, I think, and they are from 2 different planets, 2 different species, 2 different races basically, and they're at war with each other, and Marco and Alana fall in love and get married and have a baby. And so this book starts off with her having a baby, and then their 2 countries basically are trying to find them because they were deserters and kill them. And so they're trying to like protect their family and get away from the people that are trying to kill them, basically. So very good, very enjoyable. I really enjoy it. The next book that I read was Garnet Flats by Devney Perry. This is the 3rd book in the Eden series. I gave this a 3.75 stars, and I liked it. There was some aspects of this book that I did not love compared to the other ones. It follows our main character Talia Eden, and her love interest is Foster Madden? Yeah, Foster Madden. And he's a UFC fighter, and Talia lives in a small town in Montana. She's part of the Eden's siblings, and each of these books follows another Eden sibling, and there's 6 books and 6 siblings. I really loved the second half of this book. The first half of this book made me very angry and very like sick to my stomach kind of. So if you like the Eden series, you'll probably like this book, but I'm not just gonna outright recommend this book because a lot happened in it that I wasn't a huge fan of, basically. But if you want like a fun romance with a UFC fighter, you could pick it up. It's worth it. And then the next book that I read was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I gave this a 4 stars. I think I'm leaning more towards a 3.5 now after considering it for a while. The first 150 pages of this book were boring. I was bored out of my mind. I did not like it. And then the second 200 pages of this book were amazing. So good. But upon reflection, there are some things about this book that are a little weird and a little not my favorite. So yeah, I think I'm leaning towards like a 3.5. But basically, this book follows our main character, Misery Lark, and she is basically forced into a marriage of convenience to Lo Moreland. And Misery is a vampire, whatever you want to call her, and Lo is a were. And their species hate each other, basically. And so they get married to form an alliance between their 2 species. And this book is basically about keeping up the alliance and also getting to know each other and kind of falling in love, basically. I really liked the second half of this book a lot, but the first half was just not it for me. So take that with what you will. I do recommend it, especially if you like Ali Hazelwood's writing. I love Ali Hazelwood, so I was a little sad that I rated this so low, but I did like it and I do recommend it. And then I'm going to talk about these last 2 books kind of together because I read them really quickly together. So I read What Moves the Dead and What Feasts at Night. And these are both by T. Kingfisher. This is the same series. It's called the, I have it written down here, the Sworn Soldier series. And so this follows our main character, Alex Easton, and the first book, they are going because they got a message from one of their friends that they're dying. So they went to go and be with their friend while she was dying, and really strange things started happening, and they really like built a relationship with a bunch of people. There was some found family, and I really enjoyed it, but it is horror, so there's a lot of like infectious fungi and bodies moving that should be dead, and I thought that it was great, and I think that I'm about to be full force into my horror era because I loved it. And then the second book, What Feast at Night, follows Alex Easton again, but this is sometime later, and there is a magical fairy, basically. I don't know if you would necessarily call it that, but it's like a ghost that comes into your dreams and takes your breath away and like basically tries to kill you in your dreams. And so they're trying to stop that from happening, and it's very interesting, and I really enjoy it, and I love the found family. I gave both of these 4 stars, and I can't wait to see if there's anything else in this series, and if not, I can't wait to pick up more from T. Kingfisher because I just really enjoy their work. But those are all of the 19 books that I read in February. I feel like I just brain dumped a whole bunch of talking to you guys, but I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you made it all the way to the end, comment the star emoji down below and let me know what books you read in February and what books you're looking forward to reading in March. But thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. Bye!